Looks like we're live again. I am reading from Summer with the Marine. If you have been along the journey with me, we are on chapter 13, which is actually the last chapter in the book. But I just checked, there is an epilogue, so you'll want to make sure you look for that. And hello, I'm just getting used to IGTV, and here, I just waved, I think. Okay. I'm about to read chapter 13, and then I'll read the epilogue, and the book, Summer with the Marine, is free. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but there's some goodies in the back. So here we go. Chapter 13, Eisley. So this is the last chapter, so spoiler alert if anyone hasn't read the previous chapters. Okay, here we go. The time spent with Ford and Coco was amazing, but it also gave Eisley a lot to think about. They shined a light on how little she'd accomplished in her life. She could blame being stuck in the past, but the truth was, she'd been putting off her life, waiting for Ford to return, for her hero to swoop in and save the day. He'd asked her about letting people help her, but first she needed to really, truly help herself. She needed to prove to herself she could do better than scrape by paycheck to paycheck and ultimately moving back in with her mother. Granted, she was grateful for her mom's generosity, but the last weeks had served as a wake-up call for herself personally and in relationships. At age 16, Eisley had her first kiss. It was with a kid from her drama class during play rehearsals. Everyone dared them to do it for real, cheering for them to add more passion, purpose. At age 17, she went on a few dates in the wake of Ford asking her best friend to prom, hoping it would make her feel better. And at 18, she'd graduated and Ford left. She went to college, but she was stuck, frozen in time. She saw a few guys after that, but it never went beyond 1 or 2 dates or a kiss on the lips. Post-college, she dated a bit, then thought maybe she was ready to move on from Ford. But the only moving that happened was the guy she thought held promise, then soon became her ex as he went from city to city and from woman to woman. He traveled a lot for work, and it turned out he had a girlfriend in every city. She made a pact with herself not to fall for anyone. After all, it was to be the summer of Eisley finding herself. Instead, she found Ford. It had always been Ford, but she didn't think she could stand being left again. Eisley was still wrapped up in her thoughts when she went to work at Coconut Cove Cafe the next day. At the end of the shift, Betty sliced her a piece of key lime coconut cream pie and led her to the dining room patio outside the restaurant. The 2 women stood on the dock, leaning over the railing with the water lapping against the wooden pilings below. After Eisley had taken a few bites, she asked, "How'd you know I needed this?" "This pie has saved my life more than once." Betty winked. Eisley didn't know the details, but nodded because she understood it was that delicious. "Last week you were floating on clouds. Now you're plodding around here like you have cement in your shoes." Betty's eyes sparkled in the low light. "Whatever you're feeling, just know that it's part of life, and it'll pass. Also, pie always helps." "Usually I'd correct you and say ice cream, but this is exceptional. Speaking of ice cream, you're bringing some of the batches you've been making to the beach blast from the past, right?" "Of course." Eisley went on to tell her about the flavors she'd been working on. "I might even start experimenting to create an ice cream version of this." Using her fork, she pointed at what was left of the pie. The older woman smiled and nodded in all the right places, then said, "Now, tell me what's really going on." At that, Eisley told her the whole story about Ford from when they'd met until the storm. "My husband, Gus, was in the military too, long, long ago. I see some similarities. They come home with scars, but not just the visible ones on their bodies. Gus and Ford served during different wars, but they fight the same ongoing battle. Then why do they do it? Meaning and purpose. It's an honor to protect our nation and the rights of people who don't have anyone to fight for them. Sometimes even good men can be closed off. Don't blame him. Ford seems like a good, smart man. He loves you. He'll work on it." "You're right," Eisley said with a sigh. "Sure am, but there's more. You don't need to fight either. I can see you have your mental fists up. You're on the defensive, afraid of what could happen, but you'll never know until you let your guard down. In a way, you're still keeping yourself frozen in the past, and he's avoiding his fears. You're both doing the same thing, and it's not pursuing each other. Take a chance. See where it goes. If he wants to help you, let him. It'll make him feel good. If you think he needs help, do it. It'll make you feel good." Betty's words were helpful and encouraging, but Eisley still clung to the fact that she needed to grow up and let go of the past before she could move on to any sort of future with Ford. One thing she knew for sure. If it hadn't been for Betty, she wouldn't even be thinking about any of it. "I should thank you for the initiation. The dating dare? Betty scoffed. There's no initiation. I just like to have fun, play matchmaker. Do you have any idea how many tables I've waited on in my lifetime? I have to do something to mix it up and entertain myself. Plus, it's summer. I'm happily married, but it's nice to see the firsts. You know, the shyness, the stolen glances, the secret desires. It reminds me of when Gus and I first met. Betty, you're a rascal, Eisley laughed. Also, sometimes I have a feeling about two people, you know? But don't you dare say a word to Claudia. She's next. Betty winked. Eisley finished up at the restaurant, but the night was sticky with humidity, and she was restless. The reminder of the beach party blast from the past and the ice cream she'd promised to provide brought her to the kitchen in the cottage once she got home. She was experimenting with retro soda pop flavors like cherry cola, orange cream, and peanut butter banana. Betty had said that Elvis loved fried sandwiches with the same ingredients. She was trying to get the recipe just the right amount of buttery. She also started testing waffle cone recipes, which her mother was all too pleased about because it made the house smell like heaven. Her words. Afterward, Eisley was tired and tried to fall asleep, but it was stuffy up in the loft. She went outside to the hammock in the small yard and laid there. A soft breeze whispered across her skin. The palms rustled as she rocked slowly from side to side. I think I'll stay here, she said to herself. Forever. No, not forever. Blue Bay Beach was supposed to only be temporary. From inside the house, the whirring of the ice cream maker made her sit bolt upright. She almost spun out of the hammock, but dropped her foot to the ground to stabilize herself. At that moment, she realized that all along she'd been dreaming about having her own ice cream brand, but she'd kept it small, locked up, out of fear of failure. She'd been holding herself back, not only because she was stuck in the past, but because she was afraid of the future, of the uncertainty. That was no way to live. Like Betty had said about her relationship with Ford, she wouldn't know unless she let things happen. Eisley wouldn't know if she could have a successful business if she didn't try. By not trying, she'd already failed. Eisley hardly slept that night as ideas and inspiration flooded her. The moment her mother entered the kitchen the next morning, Eisley launched into her plan in a flurry. I'm nervous, no, terrified, but I'm going to do it anyway. I worked in an ice cream shop for 3 years. I ran a cafe in college. I sold skincare products. I've worked in countless offices. All of my odd jobs prepared me to own my own business. I didn't realize it, but I was getting real-life training for when a shipment was delayed, when a customer wasn't happy, and when anything and everything went wrong. She took a breath as her chest heaved with excitement. I know what to do right. Not to say that I'll always get it right, but I know what to do when I get it wrong. A smile bloomed on her face. I need to take charge of my life, and I'm going to start right now. I know what I want to do when I grow up. Her mother smiled with pride. It's a risk, to be sure, but what's that saying? Nothing ventured, nothing gained? You have moxie, honey. Diane's accent came out thick. But what will you call it? Eisley paced the short path from the living room to the kitchen. Eisley's ice cream? No one will know how to pronounce it. Mother and daughter reminisced about the terrible versions of her name people often used. Remember how Mr. Limpkin just resorted to calling me Higgs? Also, Romeo Giovanni tried calling me Eyes, like Ford called you, Diana said fondly. Eisley hadn't yet told her mother everything that happened between her and Ford on the night of the storm, partially because she was embarrassed for flying off the handle. Like Eisley had asked of him, her mother seemed to sense that she needed space and time to think things through. However, she had told her about the sweet little girl, and Diana had practically begged Eisley to marry him on the spot, if only to get a granddaughter out of the deal. However, she was quick to play it off like she was joking. Although marriage and family were never far from Eisley's mind since reuniting with Ford. What about Coco's cones? Diana suggested. Eisley lit up. That's perfect. I love it. It works because of the coconut theme of this town and as a nod to Ford's daughter. You know, you could also let him help you. But Eisley wasn't ready for that. Not yet. In the next weeks, she focused on plans for the ice cream stand. She'd start small and hope to grow into having a shop someday, but as she hashed out all of the details, her mind routinely landed on Ford. And one afternoon, he landed in Coconut Cove Cafe, just after the lunch rush. It was Betty's day off, but Claudia and Billy made Eisley wait on him. They made small talk, and Eisley couldn't deny the surge of warm fizziness floating through her like the carbonation in his usual lemon water. Signs for the beach party blast from the past were plastered all over the restaurant and in the plastic holders on the tables. Ford pointed at it and arched an eyebrow. Eisley had sensed that Betty encouraged the event not only because it would be fun, but to generate some extra business for the restaurant. She'd gleaned that Billy didn't own one of the mansions on the way into town and may have been struggling to keep the business in the black. So I see there's a big party planned and it'll feature Coco's Cones ice cream? Eisley bit her lip. I've been working on some cool retro flavors. I like the name. You can thank yourself. Actually, my mom came up with it, but it's definitely inspired by your little girl. Where is she anyway? Her maternal grandparents have her for the weekend. The nanny went up too, which means I happen to be free this weekend. I happen to know about a cool party happening right here. I'd like to go, but first I have to offer you a prompology, Ford said. Eisley's forehead wrinkled. What? I've been doing a lot of thinking, and there were countless times when I should have asked you to a school dance or out on a date. But I made a mistake when I didn't ask you to prom. After that, things changed between us. Yeah, Eisley said, feeling 17 all over again. I knew it was coming for me when I joined the military, and I wanted to take the easy way out. Go with a girl who I'd forget. He cleared his throat as though not proud of the pronouncement. Harsh, Ford. I certainly remember her. I'm sorry. I actually don't even remember her name. Jessica Sutherland. If I'd asked you instead, that might have been the beginning of the end for us, and I didn't want to risk that. But I'd like to now. That came out wrong. I don't mean start beginning... Sorry. I'm getting tongue-tied. I'm going to have a sip of water. Let me start that over. If I'd asked you instead, that might have been the beginning of the end for us, and I didn't want to risk that. But I'd like to now. That came out wrong. I don't mean start the beginning of the end. I know this is a decade late, but I apologize for being an idiot. Will you be my date to the beach blast? Is this like a promposal? Well, it's not exactly prom, but close enough. His eyes sparkled. Sure, I'd like that, but I'll have to meet you here since I have to help with setup. Eisley felt a smile widen on her cheeks. Looking forward to it. His lips quirked. Eisley was back to floating on clouds and heaps of ice cream as she prepared for the beach blast in the coming days. It was also the kickoff to the ice cream stand she'd run in the corner between the beach and restaurant on her days off. Her mother even had a colorful umbrella to use. When the night of the party finally came, the deck was strung with lights leading all the way to the patio behind the restaurant. They had a live band playing oldies. Betty had dug out some retro decorations as well. She even found the girls what she called bathing costumes, which were adorable high-waisted bathing suits. And we thought these were scandalous, she said. They're modest compared to what ladies wear nowadays. Eisley wore one with polka dots, Claudia had one with pale yellow stripes, and Billy's was a faint blue. They got dressed up and were ready for the party at dusk. A bonfire blazed on the beach as well. Eisley served ice cream from the tiki hut on the restaurant patio they ordinarily used for supplies when serving customers on the deck. Tiki torches also blazed all around. She danced as she scooped and sung along to some of the songs she knew. She'd met quite a few people in town thanks to her mother and her job. They were all thrilled about Coco's cones. Eisley hadn't stopped chatting for the hour she'd been there. Then she stopped mid-sentence as Ford sauntered down the dock, dressed in a white t-shirt and blue jeans. She went silent because her heart skipped a beat. He was so handsome, so strong. Could they manage a future together? Like the fire blazing around her, hope flared inside. She'd found herself, brought her passion to life as a business, which made her and everyone she served very happy. There you are, he said when he reached her. Here I am. She wiggled the ice cream scoop. Can you take a break? Considering I'm the proud business owner, I think so. She went on to give him a quick overview of her enterprise. If you ever need an investor, I'm your man. I'm your man. She liked the sound of that, and just as she'd offered to help him, maybe, just maybe, she'd let him help her. Ford took a deep breath and reached for her hand, drawing her out from behind the tiki bar. If this were prom and you were my date, I would have picked you up in my Jeep and pinned a corsage around your wrist. Your mom would have taken photos. If this is a do-over of sorts, will you dance with me? A song with a rocking beat morphed into a slower one. She nodded, and he took her in his arms. As they moved slowly across the dance floor to the classic song Stand By Me, Eisley let her cheek drop to Ford's chest. They swayed like that for a beat. Then she lifted her chin. It's too bad we only have this dance, this summer. Ford looked out to sea for a moment. Then his gaze dipped to hers and lingered there before his lips dropped to her mouth. When he pulled back, he said, You taste like black raspberries, like summer, this summer, the next one. I want more than one dance. I want more than one summer, Eisley. I wanted you to come back, and when you didn't, I shut down. Voices of doubt dared to dim her hope. I distanced myself from you because of the way I felt. I didn't want something to happen to me, and then it would be like your dad all over again. That can happen in military life. But what was it that you told me? Our scars are where the light comes in. You and Coco are the lights of my life. I want to brighten yours. Let me, Ford said. Eisley's heart glowed as her smile grew. She was practically vibrating with trepidation and excitement in equal measure, but Ford held her steady. I won't be afraid of you. I won't be afraid anymore. Let me love you. Let me take care of you. Let me marry you. He dropped to one knee and held out a ring as the last strains of Stand By Me faded. She squealed a little bit. The excitement won, and in the place of her fears came certainty. Ford was the one. He'd always been and always would be. She said, yes, I will marry you. At that, the song changed to a lively one. Ford scooped Eisley up in his arms, planted a kiss on her lips, and they danced the night away. So I want to thank you all for joining me. That was the end of chapter 13, and we have the epilogue coming up next. So I am going to save this and to my IGTV, and I will be right back in 1 minute with the conclusion to Summer with the Marine. Thanks for joining me.